Hello. I'm Kevin Wenning. What I've got for you today, I'm going to call a photo fail. When I edited this photo in the first place, I was making a quick edit to share it on some social media. I wasn't paying attention to all of the little details. And then I did a print run a few weeks ago. I wanted to put this photo in there, and I realized it's got a few problems. So I had to go clean it up. So what we're looking at here is before I did that cleanup. This is on my original edit. And there are a couple of obvious problems here. Number one, if you're looking at this on the video, you're probably seeing a lot of banding up here in the sky. So I've cleaned that up. That definitely is something when you're adding a heavy edit and a heavy gradient, especially in a clean sky, you're going to see some banding across the sky. So I clear that up by using a separation edit or frequency separation edit, plus adding some grain to it. So I can assure you that's not what we're working on today. That's the most obvious glaring one when I pull up this photo. The big one though, to me, when I print this, after cleaning up the sky, my eyes are going to go to other parts of the photo. I want to draw your attention here into the middle of the image. That's why I've darkened down the trees in the foreground. But when I darkened the trees in the foreground, I didn't add a nice clean mask to the trees. So you can see that there's some fringing around the trees here. They weren't moving. The wind wasn't blowing that much. So I did get a nice clean capture of this. So this is an obvious problem that I created when I was editing in post. So that's something that you don't really see when you're viewing it on your phone screen, or even when you're looking at it small in a blog post on a website. But when you go to print that, all of those little details, especially down here in the trees, are going to show up. So we're going to look at that in Photoshop. I'll show you where I created the problem for myself and show you the quick fix for that. So we're going to just go ahead and go back through the layers here, kind of deconstruct where I created the problem and fix it at the source, if you will. So number one, when I pull these in, I always do a color correction layer just for my black and white points. And then my saturation, I add a little bit more saturation to it than normal. Very subtle, but you can see that I've color corrected it from what the original was. That's not what we're looking at here on the black and white conversion layers. Let's zoom in. I don't think I created the problem there. Nope, the trees look pretty clean there, as well as the skyline does. So it's not in my black and white conversion layers. Let's see. First group here, I've stamped these, so you're not seeing all of my edits on them. Stamped just means I'm taking all of the layers below it in that group and creating a new layer from all of those layers. So that's what this stamped layer here is. So I added, it looks like a little bit of brightness to the water, and that came out pretty clean. I'm pretty happy with that. I don't see any problem there yet. That one looks okay, so I'm not going to worry about that. So the problem probably is in this group. Yep, you can see there. Let's take out the highlights edit, the shadows edit. Looks like I started to create a little problem on the mountains up there with that layer. There again, that's a stamped layer of what I just did below it here. So we're not looking at that one. When I take out this layer, yep, that's where I created the problem. So I was adding a mask to those trees down in the front to darken them, and I didn't do it cleanly, so that's where you see it spilling over a little bit onto the water here. So there's a couple of different ways that we can solve for that. I'm going to try the easiest way that I know how to start with and see if this comes out cleanly. I don't know if it will. Brush, and I'm using the subtraction layer here, and make it nice and big, make it a little bit smooth. It's doing okay, but you can see it's actually smoothing the water behind it a little bit too, which is not really what I want. I want it just to affect the edges of the trees. So, I mean, it works, but I know I'm not going to be happy with that in the end. So I'm going to have to probably, let's step back there, get rid of those few little brush strokes that I just made. And what I'm going to try next is just going into the original mask that I had there, and I'm going to edit that mask. See if I can't clean that up a little bit. Okay, so when I look at this right away, I see that I created a problem for myself by not clearing out this water here in the middle and making sure that I had a nice clean selection. So I was trying to select the water and then bring that through and make a nice clean selection between the tops of the trees here and the water. So I'm going to refine this a little bit, make a few little cleanup edits here, and then we should end up with a much cleaner line around the trees here. So So done some work now to clean up the mask and get rid of that fringing. Let's go back to our original image and see what happens now. So here's before I made those mask edits. You can see there's quite a bit of fringe there. There's actually a lot more darkness in the water behind as well. And this is after making those mask refinements. I've got a much cleaner edge around here. And now if I really want to, I can go in with my brush in subtract mode again and do just a little bit more cleanup there along the edges. And it should give me a much cleaner edge because I've cleaned up the background as well. So I can get down in these little nooks and crannies if I want to and still make a little bit better separation there along the edges of all those trees. And the beauty of this, of course, is I'm leaving the trees dark in the front, giving some nice separation between the trees and the water behind, because I want your eye to go to this bright body of water as well as to the mountains up above. Now, while I'm at it, I've already done the cleanup there on the trees in the foreground. Pretty happy with the way that I've separation between these trees and the water. But I'm going to use this brush now with the subtract just to add a little bit more highlights back into a few of the trees down here, because we've got the light coming from the left, and that gradient that I added on the bottom on the trees just darkened up everything instead of, adhering to only darken the shadows. Now again, that's my problem. I can make a little bit cleaner the next time I do that so that I'm affecting the dark areas of the photo when I add the gradient. So what I did here, I just added a little bit of highlight onto this tree over here to show the direction that the light's coming from. I still want this dark because I don't want your eye to go over there. It is a large tree, and I do want to leave it in because it's a nice framing element. It gives me a nice solid thing to anchor that side of the photo over here. I feel like over here you've got this hill kind of with the lines pulling your eye down into the photo, as well as the tree over here, but don't really have anything over here. You can kind of just slide off the photo. So that's why I've left the tree in here when I cropped it, to give it sort of some finality, a border over there, if you will. So now in my shadows and my highlights layers, looks like I've got a little bit of cleanup to do there, but you can see everything is nicely separated. I'm drawing your eye into the middle of the frame by the bright clouds, the bright mountains, and the bright water there. And then the trees down in front look a lot more natural. They don't look like I the edit on them. Doing any kind of a black and white edit, obviously you're going for that heavy toning, that heavy effect where you've got a dark gradient in the sky drawing your eye down away from the edge of the image into something that you want the viewer to look at. But cleaning up just those kind of little mistakes that you make in your editing that detract and are an obvious cue to somebody that you made a heavy edit to it, that's what you want to clean up, especially before you go to print an image and print it large when somebody's going to be standing up right next to it with their nose up against it, examining those pixels and the details.